Giovanni. This is our first meeting of the group of Italians that will talk about the psychic being, the inner being and any organization, be it our Auroville community, our family or workplace. My name is Giovanni, and with me, there is Marco, Sarah and Alessandra. I have prepared 3 questions that will guide us in this first meeting. The microphone that I have in my hand will be used as a talking stick. Those who feel like they have to contribute will take it from the center and will express what their inner being will lead them to say. Now I would like to invite everyone to a few seconds of silence and maybe try to connect individually with your own psychic being. The first question I have prepared concerns Auroville, the community where the 4 of us live. I would like to know your personal relationship with the 3 Auroville documents. The dream, the charter and being a true Aurovillian.
I am Marco. The dream has always been part of me, before I even came to Auroville. Not in the terms in which my mother speaks, but there has always been a part of me that has tried to convey this dream in my work, in my family. When I found myself in front of Auroville and these documents, there was a complete reflection on these things. So it was very easy. In my opinion, these are values that we carry within us, and that we can transmit to others. We can transmit them even when we leave Auroville. I always call it a contamination of expressing these values.
Giovanni, thank you Marco. For me, the dream is available on the Auroville website. I tried to find it in Italian, but I couldn't find it. But now, with Google Translate, you can translate everything into Italian. It describes years before the actual Auroville, what Auroville could be. A place where money is not as important as it is in today's world. Where you choose your job for your inclinations, not to survive. Where there is no war. A world that someone could call utopian, which I consider to be real. It is not yet Auroville. It is not yet the community where I live. Indeed, I must say, we are far from this dream. The few examples that came to mind, money, work, harmony, we still don't have that dream. We still haven't realized it. But that's why I chose to come here, to work, to realize this dream. The Auroville Charter is another document I am very attached to. Every time there is the celebration of Auroville's birthday, we listen to the mother, the founder of Auroville. We read the charter in French. And every time I get the chills. The charter is another way of seeing the dream, another declination of the same concept.
Alessandra, Marco, I am Alessandra. I am here because I feel that Auroville is inside each of us. And to be here is a call that goes beyond rationality. If I chose the path of rationality, I wouldn't be here. I read the charter, the Auroville statute, and I often don't find real. But then I ask myself, what is Auroville? Auroville is us. It is not a sheet of paper, it is not an institution in a town hall, it is not in an office, but it is inside each of us. When I think of Auroville, it is alive inside me more than ever. The daily events, from COVID to today, have made it very difficult to realize and believe. But then I think, as now, if you hear the rain outside, and I see that the rain moves the water is no longer transparent, it is opaque, it is dirty. If we go down, 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 the water is clear. And the same is Auroville. What we do, the moments of contrast, of difficulties, are there on the surface. But in reality, the essence of Auroville is untouchable. It has always been inside us, before us, and it will be there. And then, when I think of this, I find my Auroville, our Auroville. I think it is the vision that is stronger than any obstacle. Especially in this historical moment, where in the world, we can see so many problems, which are reflections here, small ones. One of the sentences of these documents, calling them documents, makes little sense to me. They are more than documents, they are formations that want to manifest themselves on this ground level. But yes, one of the sentences, all people of goodwill are invited to Auroville. It reminds me of another thing. People who want to contribute to Auroville must be ready for a great adventure. And I feel in these two things a spirit of indomitability, a spirit that wants to go beyond everything that is the past. Because that is the great obstacle inside us, individually and also collectively. We see how many obstacles there are to be able to go towards something. I don't have the words, it's not right, it's not good, but really something harmonious, something that does not create conflict, does not create division or separation. And it is. The world is overrun by division, separation, conflicts. Therefore, yes, we are all dreamers, because we know that there is an inner reality beyond conflict and separation. And this is the aspiration that we want to see realized, both internally and externally. If we are really honest with ourselves, we see that the difficulties, the obstacles are many, because we are really complex beings. There is work to be done. The Mother says that there is work to be done. I just remembered something to add about the Auroville statute. When you read it, it is so simple that even a child like my son can understand it. But as a master said, I remember his words, he says, the easiest things to do are also the easiest things not to do. And then the word paradox clicks in my head, which Jung also often mentions. And the key is paradox, because thanks to paradox we go beyond the boundaries of rationality, those boundaries that make you say, I'm right, you're wrong. Maybe Auroville is the place where we must abandon the old mental paradigms, that if I'm right, you're wrong. Maybe all the reasons are there, because we are all an expression of truth. We are like a polyhedron, and each of us carries a piece of that truth, that can only be complete thanks to all of us. So maybe, if we can be humble with ourselves, and with others, we can understand that the essence of this experiment is coexistence, co-creation. That's what I feel.
Liliana, I think that the most important thing to change the world and to change Auroville is to be here. Because we are here, because we are chosen, we don't go down. It's about changing consciousness. If every man and every woman on earth changes their consciousness, something will change.
Giovanni. This was Liliana, who I forgot to introduce earlier. She brought us back to the central theme of consciousness, of the inner being, of the psychic being, of the soul. It has many names, and it's one of the keys, if not the key, in my opinion. I repeat what I heard from others, it's nothing new, but if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself first. That's the job that each of us here in Auroville, but also in the world, is called to do. Otherwise, we go to the apocalypse as a human species. I'll put the microphone back in the middle if there's any other intervention, otherwise I'll read the second question. So, the second point of reflection is the following. How could an organization be guided by the perspective of the psychic being?
Alessandra, in this particular moment of the cyclone and the flooding, the answer came by itself. I was perhaps the first to answer, how could it be? First of all, selfishness. If we think of ourselves, or if we see ourselves as separated from others, we don't let this Auroville, this experiment, this coexistence, prevent it from being realized. So, if I still see myself as separated from you, and I put myself in the first place, I certainly prevent, as they say in Italian, I remember, I also prevent a part of me from growing. Because if I block you, it's as if I blocked a part of myself. So, in my opinion, it is selfishness, which is still a very rooted thing in the human being. This is my answer. If I went on, it would be a long story.
Marco, so, I believe that within an organization, whether it's Auroville, but also the family, everywhere, consciousness, let's call it what we want, consciousness, presence, must generate an action. So, it's this action that allows others to refer to themselves, and can help the organization to grow. Naturally, the action, the right action, the conscious action, the action of presence, must be researched, studied, thought about, and let express itself. So, it's a constant work of attention, of presence, precisely, in the various expressions that we find, whether they are meetings, collaborations, research, which is much easier here, in quotation marks, because we all try to work in this sense, I believe. But all this can be carried out in society in general, and in the family that we have around, the people that we have around.
Giovanni, I would like to offer 2 examples of an organization, how to handle, because otherwise it remains a bit theoretical. These are 2 examples that we adopt here at Auroville, or that at least in one of the groups I was part of, we adopted. In every meeting, before starting a meeting in a group, in a working group, instead of starting the discussion right away, very simply, we took a minute, a little less, a little more, of silence. So, instead of leaving it to the mind, instead of leaving the response to the mind, we were looking inside the group through silence, by connecting to our consciousness. And this is something that can be done in every organization or even in a family. Not to be hasty in wanting to contribute with words in any discussion, but to take a moment of reflection before speaking. Another thing that I found very interesting is the presence in the meetings, that is, the groups where decisions are made in Auroville, the presence of a silent observer. In short, there is a group of people here in Auroville who are dedicated to this practice. That is, to be present in the meetings, simply to listen and remain silent throughout the meeting. And the job of these people is precisely to connect with the divine, with their inner consciousness, and manifest it during the meeting itself. So, it comes to my mind, I have worked for Amazon, the company Amazon, for several years, and they had a similar system, but only up to a certain point, similar. They left a free chair in the meetings, and this free chair represented the consumer. Because Amazon professes or would like to be the most customer-centric company that puts the customer at the center of everything. And it represented this intention by leaving a free chair in the meetings to remind the participants at the meetings that the customer was there. And that was the last point of reference. During the meetings, even if we talked about money, business, how to make more money, in reality, we should not forget that the most important thing for Amazon was the customer. I must confess that when I started working for Amazon, this custom was already being lost. In recent years, there was no longer a free chair, there were very tight meetings of people who spoke, and the customer was forgotten. So, here in Auroville, we still have this practice of the silent observer. Maybe we can think of the mother. In every meeting room in Auroville, there is an image of the founder, of the mother, and also of Sri Aurobindo, the spiritual companion of the mother. Not for a form of idolatry, but really for. Sometimes I look up, I see the image and I remember. Oh, okay, this is why I'm here.
Alessandra, speaking of the silent observer, I think of myself, and this practice, that I try to live in every moment. I try to observe myself, actions, thoughts, and emotions. I must say that it helps me a lot when I feel negative emotions, because emotions are the simplest thing, they either bring you up or they throw you down. It is very easy to understand when an emotion is positive or negative, you feel it. I start with emotions to understand which thoughts have triggered them. I do the same with thoughts, I observe them, I accept them, I understand them, and if they are negative, I try to get them away as soon as possible. There is the rule of 7 seconds, because then a negative thought becomes a negative vibration, and a negative vibration attaches itself to our subconscious, to our subliminal consciousness, and then, once attached, it is much more complicated to eradicate it. In short, this practice of observing oneself has been a great turning point in my life, and I am convinced that it will lead me to make progress towards the realization of my happiness, which I think is the ultimate purpose for which we come here to the world. We are spiritual beings inside a body, and we are here to realize our happiness and that of those around us.
Sarah, when we talk about organization, my mind is activated to say, "Oh God, where do I start to take this topic from? From the simplest thing, from the most complex thing?" The first thing that came to my mind was to say that we are far from a guided organization, not even from a higher mentality, because for me the organization is not. There must be a level of integrity of our different states, quite evolved, a particular coherence for what the action expresses, the action necessary for decisions, and a lot of maturity. There are listening techniques, moments of silence, which are important. They are important techniques. When you are together, you have to make decisions so as not to be carried away by emotions. But yes, being professional. Every field has its own branch. To make the roads, you need engineers. You can't just be a good-willed person. Maybe a good-willed person can help, but you definitely need an engineer. In the medical field, it's the same thing. I see it as a very complex topic that activates the mind a lot. So, you have to stay on the practical side. That's the first thing for me.
Liliana, I think the problem of organizations is only one. When an organization becomes a power.
Alessandra, let's go back to what I said at the beginning. Individualism, selfishness, often the thirst for power, is connected to personal wishes, to one's own interest, but also to that of the community. I don't think the sense of power can express itself together with the sense of community. You have to let go of power to make something more important come in, which is for the good of the community. You can't burn the ideals away.
Giovanni, I was thinking of a concept that is well known to us here. Maybe for those who listen to us, not from Auroville, it can be less known. When the mother was still alive, she imagined Auroville in the late 60s. In 1968, it was built for the first time and inaugurated. She left the body a few years later. Someone asked her what form the Auroville's organization should take. To be closer to communism, which dominated a part of the world, or democracy. She came up with this definition that I find beautiful. She spoke in English or French, not Italian. In English it was called divine anarchy. In Italian it could be translated as anarchia divina or fondata sul divino. An organization where there are no rules, but if you stop at this level, it would be chaos. It's like saying that nature is founded on chaos. I don't think so. There is an order. Someone says that God is a mathematician, that the universe is mathematical. There is beauty everywhere, order, harmony. What appears to us as chaos is only apparent. Without rules, it would generate chaos. There is no need for rules when those who live in this context without rules are connected to the divine. What do you need rules for? You naturally act for the good of the community, for your own good. You see the other as yourself. You recognize the interconnection between everyone. Even in nature. I suffer if they cut a tree, I feel pain. I feel pain physically and mentally.
Marco, I just wanted to say that the idea of divine anarchy has always intrigued me. It gives you total freedom. And also the freedom to make mistakes. You can learn to change your behavior. The concept of total freedom that the Mother has expressed is an incredible fortune. The Mother and Sri Aurobindo never said what we should do. They always left us totally free to find the way. And this is incredibly great.
Sarah, I just thought of an anecdote from Taoism. It says that the best emperor is the one who does not administer his subjects. He is the one who leaves the subjects to administer themselves freely. Because it is what is most in tune with nature. Everyone has the freedom to find their own action, their own way of expressing themselves.
Giovanni. Yes. I will now read the third and last question that I have prepared. But obviously we all feel free to express other things. This is just a point of reflection. How can we accelerate the change of consciousness in the world? And how can we participate concretely in the change?
Alessandra, I will answer immediately, because I follow what my inner being answers. I'm trying to answer not with rationality. My inner voice said fear. The word fear. So I'm leaving the paradigm of fear. Fear is the rationality that makes us stay in the known, in the safe, in the non-risk. Obviously here in Auroville, even in difficulties, I have less fear, because I feel surrounded by other people who, like me, have left safety behind to embrace this new adventure.
Giovanni. When I listen to friends, or when I was in a situation of making a change in life, or when I was in a situation where I didn't know what the future would bring me, when I hear someone expressing himself in this way, I say, blessed you, how nice to be in this situation. Because it opens up all possibilities. If you think you know what the future brings you, yes, one who lives to do, he already knows. But when you don't know, everything is open. A world of possibilities opens up. You have to change your job. What will you do? Instead of being afraid, I felt and communicated to my friends, oh, how nice. You should feel this feeling, which I felt, and I invited others to feel it, like the emotion of the unknown, of everything is possible. Including the bravest dreams that can come to mind. It's possible, now you're in this state where everything is possible. Blessed you. This is the state I was in when I came here to Auroville, and I still have it, because there are, I don't say doubts, but difficulties every moment. And if one thinks one overcomes fear, one is screwed. Instead, I always see it as a possibility to imagine the best of possible worlds. Now I'm waiting for the visa. For a couple of years, I've always had it late. It was blocked, and I didn't know if I would get less years. A 5-year or a year visa will arrive. And I was good or not good? Am I on the list of the bad guys? Yes, I am on the list of bad guys. And so, I only had a year instead of 5 years. But they are small things, they are still here, and they are here to stay for a long time. I feel like I'm here to change things. I have no idea of the role I will have in the change, but I'm extremely convinced that each of us has a role to play in this game. What was the initial question? I'm going to read it again. How to accelerate the change of consciousness? And how can I participate? Remaining, as Marco said at the beginning, in the presence. Alessandra was talking about fear. Another concept came to mind, maybe the expression that came to mind is not the right one, but it was an inspiration, I felt an inspiration, and the word was abundance. Just as Alessandra was afraid to win against fear, I was afraid of abundance, because another of the blocks I often had in the past was the fear of money, especially money. One of the powers, Liliana was talking about power, there are many ways to manifest power, money is a powerful energy. So I was afraid when I decided to leave Amazon, which is a job that paid me very well, what to do next. I didn't know. Then I decided to come to Auroville, you can understand that I jumped into the unknown. Here, the salary we receive, if we receive it, for those who have nothing, it is minimal, we are talking about 100 euros, 200 euros a month. It's 200 euros. So you are below the threshold of survival, in theory. but then the community helps you in some way. But you still jump into the unknown. It's a call, if not for everyone, for most of us, who chose to come to Auroville. So abundance, I feel like I live in abundance. I reorganized my beliefs because it's about really deciding, from this moment on. I don't believe in the control of abundance, in scarcity, but I believe in abundance. Like magic, I started to see my Amazon shares increase in value. I sat down and continued a series of value, luckily, because only with savings, I can now live in Auroville, not with the salary that I don't have. And in the meantime, I have to help other people here. I feel it as a grace, a divine grace, so for me, it's a sign that I'm doing the right thing.
Marco, unfortunately, fear is what rules the world right now. Because politicians try to inflict fear on the people who live in their community, in their state. And the fear of losing what you have, the fear of not having enough to survive, the fear in general, the fear of people who fight each other, because everyone thinks they're right. For religious reasons, very often for religious reasons, and to leave fear, let's say, in the situation we're in, is more easy. Because we open up to the world, to the community, to ourselves. But in the world, unfortunately, it's what completely dominates the actions of most people. The fear of having to run away, the fear of having to suffer. Those who suffer all the time. So, how to influence society? In society, in the world, I find it extremely difficult right now. Only through the presence of what we do, through the consciousness we try to use, and of course here, this has allowed us in an absolute way. But here too, we try to use fear, at least in these situations we're in right now. And many unfortunately fall into fear, because they're afraid of what's going to happen. But it's what I always say. Don't give up, you don't have to let yourself go. You don't have to abandon our values. Don't leave room for this fear. And open up, as Giovanni says, to abundance.
Liliana, in my opinion, the problem is not fear in itself. The problem is in what they have taught us. So, the future doesn't exist. It's like the past doesn't exist anymore. What exists is now, the power of now.
Sarah, how to accelerate change? I've come to have superpowers. I came to Auroville when I was 20 years old. I wasn't afraid, and I threw myself in without any thought, without any attachment to the past. I had little of it, only with a great aspiration for a future I didn't know. The will to be, and not to be. There is this thing, that for me is how to accelerate change, and also a way to release one's conditioning and one's ego, so that the true being can be, act, manifest itself, and we are no longer us. It's no longer an identification with our personality, our character, our desire, our needs. There is a different flow because we are no longer us. Sri Aurobindo speaks of aspiration, surrender and receptivity. How to put important qualities into the integral yoga. I think that working with these is very important for me personally. We often forget about receptivity, because being receptive to light often is obscured by our personal desires, what we think is good or not good. So, superpowers.
Giovanni. The second part of the question was what we can do personally. I remember that one of the reasons why Auroville exists is to be an example to the world. So, what can I do? I do what I can in my little way, so that Auroville can be a good example to the world. There are many things we do here in Auroville, in a different way than in most places in the world. We are already an example to the world, there is much more to do. This is my part, this is the reason why I am here, to work for myself, to work in the community, and to be an example to the world.
Sarah, what Auroville symbolically represents, as Mother said, goes beyond the rational. Symbolically, Auroville represents the human impossibility in this evolutionary stage. It is precisely because of this human impossibility that it must exist. To create, to have. One of the most important mottos of Auroville is, unity in diversity. and we often forget how difficult it is to realize this dream. If we treated it with more love and delicacy, maybe we could take a few more steps forward.
Alessandra, here is a practical recipe, very simple to do, but also not to do. As I said before, it is also critical. How destructive the criticism is. Is it so easy to criticize? And in my opinion, criticizing must be done with the victim's mentality. I don't do this because there is no such thing, or because others do this. Auroville is not realized because people are selfish. Auroville is not realized because people are attached to money. Auroville is not realized because people are attached to power. So, to always bring others. To give power to the outside and not to oneself. In reality, it is true. There is selfishness, there is thirst for power, thirst for money, etc. But if something is true, it is also true for the law of the universe. So, if there is thirst for power, there is also the desire to collaborate. So, why not look at the positive side, which is to give power to oneself and not to external causes? So, in my opinion, an important recipe is to get out of the victim's mentality and enter the vision that we can, we are capable, and we have the power to do it. If we really want to.
Giovanni, I must say that now it comes to my mind that my decision to come here is an example I offer to the world. Because many friends can't believe my choice and also still seeing me here after so many years. They are successful professionals, people I know. But all of them suffer. Now I would like to say friends. You know who I am referring to, if you hear me. They are not happy. How can you be happy in the world that each of us has left behind? It is a sad world where you live to work, to bring home the money in most cases. Dominated by fear, with a sense of scarcity, etc. So, my example of coming here and staying convinced is already a way to influence others. Not that they should come here. Because it is not that Auroville exists only here in India. Auroville is an ideal, as Sarah said. It is almost impossible, but it will be. The mother said, she saw it in the future, that may not exist, as Liliana said. But in reality it exists. We don't know when it will be realized, in 100 or 1000 years. But I would like to realize it in this life, to be honest. Not to wait for other incarnations. I think it is possible. If we don't believe it is possible, it won't be. If we believe it is possible, it will be. If we believe it, there is a possibility that it will be realized. I leave the microphone in the center for the last time. If no one takes it in the next 30 seconds, I will take it again just to close our meeting. I take it again. I would like to thank Matthew from Auroville Radio, who recorded us. Thanks to him, you will be able to listen to our dialogue. Liliana, Sarah, Marco and Alessandra. I hope it can be of interest to each of you, what we have shared. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this testimonial. If you would like to take part in this project on the inner being, or if you have any questions or comments for our team or participants, please feel free to contact us using the email at the bottom of this webpage.
This is Auroville Radio, Voices from the City of Dawn.